Hmm, my friend. Have you ever woken up one morning and felt like the world suddenly became heavier? Not because anything changed outside, but because something shifted inside you. A strange feeling, a quiet discomfort, a sense that you're no longer the person you thought you were. Or worse, you're no longer the person the world needs you to be. This is where our story begins. Today, we walk into the haunting, surreal, painfully human world of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. A story that is not about monsters, but about what happens when life slowly turns you into something unrecognizable. Because sometimes, my friend, the real transformation is not physical, it's emotional, it's psychological. It's the slow erosion of a person who gives too much and receives too little. Kafka doesn't open this story with thunder or prophecy. No. He opens with something far more unsettling. Gregor Samsa waking up one ordinary morning in an extraordinary condition. He has turned into an insect, a creature, a thing. But here's the twist. Gregor's first reaction isn't horror. It's not fear. It's not even confusion. His first thought is, I'm going to be late for work. And that, my friend, is where the truth of this story begins. Because Gregor wasn't just a man. He was a provider, a worker, a sacrifice on two legs. His value, at least to the world around him, came from what he earned, not who he was. So even when his body betrays him, his mind clings to responsibility. He doesn't ask, what happened to me? He asks, how will my manager react? Who will cover for me? What will my family do now? And right there, in that moment, Kafka reveals the first lesson. Society trains us to be useful long before it trains us to be human. Gregor has given his family everything: his money, his health, his youth, his freedom. He works a job he hates, travels endlessly, suffers silently, all so his father, mother, and sister can live well. But the moment he can no longer serve them, the moment he becomes a burden instead of a blessing, their love begins to crack. This is not a story about transformation. It is a story about value, how we measure it, how we lose it, and how the world treats us when we fall. Gregor's metamorphosis simply makes visible what he has felt inside for years: unseen, unheard, unappreciated. My friend, Kafka didn't write a monster story. He wrote a mirror that asks us, what happens when your usefulness ends? Will people still love you if you stop giving? Are you a person, or are you a role? And that is why the metamorphosis remains powerful today. Because Gregor's pain is modern pain, the pain of burnout, the pain of being invisible, the pain of being valued only for what you can provide. So, as we begin this journey, remember this: Gregor Samsa did not become an insect that morning. He simply woke up in the form that reflected how the world had already been treating him. Welcome, my friend, to the metamorphosis. Now, let's begin. When a story begins with the sentence, Gregor Samsa woke up one morning from troubled dreams, you already know that the world is about to shift in ways you cannot predict. Gregor opens his eyes, expecting nothing more than another exhausting day, another train to catch, another client to please, another burden to carry. But today, something stops him. Something small, strange, and terrifyingly real. His body does not feel like his body. His back feels stiff, not like the ache of hard work, but like a shell, smooth, hard, cold. He lifts his head and finds it moves with the awkward, heavy motion of something not made of flesh. He tries to stretch, but instead of arms, something else moves, thin, fragile, twitching. He looks down and sees a body that belongs in nightmares, not in a bed. Gregor Samsa has turned into an insect. But the most shocking part isn't the transformation itself. It's the reaction. Because Gregor does not scream, he does not cry, he does not even feel anger. His first thought is, I'm going to be late for work. And my friend, that one thought reveals everything about his life. Gregor has been working so hard for so long that even when the impossible happens, his mind still clings to duty, to obligation, to the role he has been forced to play. His humanity has been trained out of him, piece by piece, until responsibility became his identity. Gregor tries to move. He rolls, twists, strains, but his new limbs skitter across the sheets in ways he cannot control. He tries to speak, to call out, to reassure his worried family outside the door, but only a distorted noise comes out, a sound that doesn't belong to him. And yet, he keeps trying, because Gregor believes his worth comes from what he can do for others. Kafka uses this moment to whisper something painful. Sometimes the world turns you into something you're not, long before you even notice. Gregor's transformation is only the physical proof of a spiritual truth. He has not lived for himself in years. Outside his room, his mother calls gently. His father demands answers. His sister, Greta, paces nervously. They love Gregor, but they love the version of him that wakes up early, goes to work, brings home money, and keeps the household alive. They love his usefulness. Gregor knows this, and so, even as a creature, he tries to get up, not to save himself, but to avoid disappointing them. My friend, this is the tragedy. Before the world sees Gregor as an insect, he already sees himself as a responsibility. He drags his strange, unfamiliar body towards the door. Every inch is pain, every movement is wrong, but he keeps going. Because that is who Gregor Samsa is, a man who survives for others until he disappears inside his own life. And when he finally opens the door, when his family and his manager see what has become of him, they react not with compassion, but with fear, disgust, shock. Gregor's transformation didn't change how the world saw him. It revealed it.
My friend, there's a kind of prison in life that doesn't need bars, locks, or guards. It's the prison built from expectation, from duty, from the weight of being the one everyone depends on. Gregor Samsa lived in that prison long before he ever opened his eyes as an insect. Today, the world sees his transformation, But Gregor's real transformation, the one that truly matters, happened years before this morning. Let's step into that truth. Gregor lies on the floor, struggling to breathe inside this new form. But outside the door, his family is panicking, not because Gregor is suffering, but because Gregor is not working. His manager scolds him through the door with the tone of a man who values punctuality more than a person's well-being. His father yells, not out of concern, but out of fear that their household's income is slipping away. His mother wrings her hands, terrified of what this will mean for the family. And Gregor hears it all. Every word, every sigh, every expectation crashing into him like stones against a window. He realizes something painful, something that sinks into him deeper than any physical transformation. His worth was never in who he was. It was in what he did. This is the invisible prison. Gregor had worked tirelessly to support his family. Long hours, endless travel, sleep sacrificed, dreams buried. He paid off debts that were not his. He carried burdens he never chose. He lived a life designed by others. He was not their son. He was their lifeline. And now, unable to provide, unable to work, unable to carry that weight, Gregor is frightened, not of his new body, but of being useless. My friend, this is a terrifying truth. Sometimes the greatest fear is not losing yourself, but losing your purpose in other people's eyes. His sister, Greta, sweet Greta, is the first to enter his room. At first, she is shaken. Of course she is. Her beloved brother is now a creature she does not recognize. But beneath her fear is something softer, something fragile. A desire to be helpful, a desire to be useful. Greta becomes the caretaker. She brings food. She cleans his room. She tries. Her kindness, however, is not unconditional. It is the kindness of someone who has been trained, like Gregor, to define their worth through service. The prison has more than one prisoner. Gregor listens as his family discusses him on the other side of the wall. He is no longer included. He is spoken about, not spoken to. And that is when he realizes the second truth of his life. He was never truly part of their world. He was the engine behind it. This is the loneliness Kafka wants us to feel, the loneliness of a person surrounded by people who don't see him. Gregor's body may be trapped inside his bedroom, but his spirit was trapped long before, inside expectations he never chose. As the day ends, Gregor curls into the corner of the room, a place where he once stored luggage from endless business trips. It's symbolic, my friend, that the corner where Gregor kept the signs of his labor is now the corner where he tries to hide himself. The life he built has now become the place he retreats from. And he understands, in a painful, quiet whisper of thought, I have never lived for myself. His metamorphosis isn't a punishment, it's a revelation. My friend, how many people live in invisible prisons? Prisons of responsibility, prisons of expectation, prisons built by love that demands too much. Gregor Samsa isn't just a character, he's a reflection of anyone who has worked themselves until their spirit cracked.
There's something tragic that happens when a person changes unexpectedly. It forces everyone around them to reveal who they truly are. Gregor's transformation does not only reshape his own life, it reshapes the entire Samsa household. And it begins quietly, not with shouting, not with chaos, but with small shifts in tone, in duty, in the way people look at one another. The Samsa family begins to change. Gregor's sister, Grete, becomes the gentle bridge between Gregor and the rest of the world. Every morning she enters his room, hesitant, trembling, carrying leftovers on a plate. Old vegetables, bones stripped from meat, scraps no one else wants. She doesn't know what insects eat, but she tries. And in that trying, in that fearful kindness, Grete becomes something new, the caretaker. Yet behind her kindness, there is another truth forming. Grete is stepping into a role because someone must. And my friend, roles are powerful things. Once you step into one, it begins to shape you. Gregor's father, however, changes in a different way. Before Gregor's metamorphosis, his father wore defeat like an old coat. He was tired, unemployed, broken by life. Gregor's hard work allowed him to rest. Too much rest, perhaps. But now that Gregor can no longer provide, the father awakens with a mixture of shame and resentment. He puts on an old uniform from a long-forgotten job. He straightens his posture, he tries to reclaim authority. But the anger in his eyes, whenever he looks at Gregor, says everything. He blames his son for ruining the order he had become comfortable in. Gregor is a reminder of the father's own weaknesses, and weak men often respond to pain with anger. Gregor's mother, my friend, her change is the saddest. She loves Gregor, deeply, truly. But love mixed with fear creates a kind of paralysis. She cannot bear to see what he has become, so she avoids his room, covering her mouth when she speaks of him, as if the truth itself is something poisonous. She wants to help, but she cannot face him. Her love is real, but her courage is small. Kafka shows us something quiet yet devastating. A mother's heart can break even as she turns away. And what about Gregor himself? As his family begins to shift, he begins to understand that his transformation is not simply physical. He is becoming a symbol, a burden, a secret, a quiet shame the family must work around and cope with. Gregor listens from behind his closed door as they discuss him. They don't say Gregor. They say it. They whisper about solutions, schedules, money, responsibilities. And Gregor feels something inside his human mind start to dissolve. His place in the family. He realizes with a pain deeper than physical suffering that he is no longer part of their world. Not fully, not emotionally, not practically. He has become an inconvenience in the home he once supported. My friend, Chapter 3 reveals one of Kafka's most painful truths. When one person in a family changes, everyone changes with them, not always for better. Grete becomes more dutiful. The father becomes harsher. The mother becomes distant. And Gregor becomes the shadow of a man he once was. He listens. He waits. He hopes. He hurts. And through his silent suffering, we see how fragile love built on obligation truly is. This household,
once dependent on Gregor, is now learning to live without him. And that is the first domino in a line of tragedies. My friend, there's a kind of prison in life that doesn't need bars, locks, or guards. It's the prison built from expectation, from duty, from the weight of being the one everyone depends on. Gregor Samsa lived in that prison long before he ever opened his eyes as an insect. Today, the world sees his transformation, but Gregor's real transformation, the one that truly matters, happened years before this morning. Let's step into that truth. Gregor lies on the floor, struggling to breathe inside this new form. But outside the door, his family is panicking, not because Gregor is suffering, but because Gregor is not working. His manager scolds him through the door with the tone of a man who values punctuality more than a person's well-being. His father yells, not out of concern, but out of fear that their household's income is slipping away. His mother wrings her hands, terrified of what this will mean for the family. And Gregor hears it all. Every word, every sigh, every expectation crashing into him like stones against a window. He realizes something painful, something that sinks into him deeper than any physical transformation. His worth was never in who he was. It was in what he did. This is the invisible prison. Gregor had worked tirelessly to support his family. Long hours, endless travel, sleep sacrificed, dreams buried. He paid off debts that were not his. He carried burdens he never chose. He lived a life designed by others. He was not their son. He was their lifeline. And now, unable to provide, unable to work, unable to carry that weight, Gregor is frightened, not of his new body, but of being useless. My friend, this is a terrifying truth. Sometimes the greatest fear is not losing yourself, but losing your purpose in other people's eyes. His sister, Greta, sweet Greta, is the first to enter his room. At first, she is shaken. Of course she is. Her beloved brother is now a creature she does not recognize. But beneath her fear is something softer, something fragile. A desire to be helpful, a desire to be useful. Greta becomes the caretaker. She brings food. She cleans his room. She tries. Her kindness, however, is not unconditional. It is the kindness of someone who has been trained, like Gregor, to define their worth through service. The prison has more than one prisoner. Gregor listens as his family discusses him on the other side of the wall. He is no longer included. He is spoken about, not spoken to. And that is when he realizes the second truth of his life. He was never truly part of their world. He was the engine behind it. This is the loneliness Kafka wants us to feel, the loneliness of a person surrounded by people who don't see him. Gregor's body may be trapped inside his bedroom, but his spirit was trapped long before, inside expectations he never chose. As the day ends, Gregor curls into the corner of the room, a place where he once stored luggage from endless business trips. It's symbolic, my friend, that the corner where Gregor kept the signs of his labor is now the corner where he tries to hide himself. The life he built has now become the place he retreats from. And he understands, in a painful, quiet whisper of thought, I have never lived for myself. His metamorphosis isn't a punishment, it's a revelation. My friend, how many people live in invisible prisons? Prisons of responsibility, prisons of expectation, prisons built by love that demands too much. Gregor Samsa isn't just a character, he's a reflection of anyone who has worked themselves until their spirit cracked.
There are moments in life that feel like they were never meant to happen. Moments so heavy, so fragile, that they change the direction of a family forever. This chapter is one of those moments, because today, Gregor's mother finally sees him. Not the memory of him, not the idea of him, not the son she holds in her heart, but the creature he has become. Gregor has been alone in his room for days now. Grete tends to him, but even her care is starting to feel mechanical, forced. His mother, meanwhile, has stayed away, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of what her son has become. Fear of what it will do to her heart to see him this way. You see, my friend, a mother's love is deep, messy, and fragile. Sometimes it's brave, and sometimes it breaks under the weight of the unimaginable. Today, Grete decides to tidy Gregor's room. But she isn't thinking of Gregor. She's thinking of convenience. She wants more space to move around, more space to clean, more space to store things. So she begins to remove Gregor's furniture, piece by piece. His desk, his chair, his drawers, his shelves. The objects that once held his human life. And here, Gregor experiences a heartbreak that has nothing to do with his insect body. He realizes his sister is not making room for him. She is erasing him, removing the pieces of who he once was, stripping the room of its memories. Gregor feels panic, not for his body, but for his identity. He tries to protect the furniture. He crawls onto the wall, clings to the framed picture of a woman in furs, the last symbol of beauty, dignity, and humanity he remembers. That's when Grete calls for their mother. And everything changes. Gregor's mother enters the room. Not the doorway, not from behind the safety of distance, but inside, fully, physically, emotionally. She gasps. Her eyes fill with terror she cannot hide. Her hands tremble as she grabs her chest, but beneath the fear, something else flickers in her expression. Recognition. Not of the creature on the wall, but of the soul inside it. A mother knows her child even in the darkest confusion, even through nightmares, even through transformations that should not be possible. But the fear is too much. Her breath shortens. She sways. The room spins. Her body gives in to shock. Grete tries to comfort her, but she herself is overwhelmed, crying, shouting, angry, that Gregor dared to cling to the picture instead of hiding away like before. In that moment, the roles in the family shift once again. Grete becomes the guardian of her mother. Gregor becomes the danger,
The father, far away, becomes the judge waiting for a sentence. And the mother, the heart of the home, is caught between love and terror. Gregor watches silently from the wall as the two women he loves cry because of him. He wants to comfort them. He wants to speak. He wants to say, "It's still me. I'm still here." But his voice is gone. His presence is frightening. His body betrays every intention. And his mother, unable to bear the weight of the sight, collapses into Greta's arms. Gregor crawls down, feeling a pain deeper than his injuries. A pain that only comes when someone you love is hurt by the mere act of seeing you. Kafka wants us to feel this truth. The greatest sorrow is not being rejected by strangers, but being feared by those who once loved you. Where love trembles, motherhood cracks, and Gregor realizes that even the purest affection can be shattered by the weight of transformation.
My friend, there's a saying, when fear enters a household, anger follows. And in the Samsa home, fear has already opened the door. Now, anger walks in. Today, we witness one of the most painful moments in Gregor's story, not because of what happens to his body, but because of what it reveals about his father's heart. When Gregor's mother collapses after seeing him, Goethe screams for help, not for Gregor, but from him. Her voice shakes, carrying both panic and frustration. "Father, come quickly!" The father enters the hallway, and the moment he sees his wife clinging to Goethe, crying, trembling, barely able to breathe, something inside him snaps. Not the part that loves his wife, but the part that fears losing control of a world he doesn't understand. He looks at Gregor, not with curiosity, not with confusion, but with rage. You have to understand, my friend. Gregor's father is a man who has spent years depending on Gregor for money, for stability, for survival. Gregor paid off the debts his father once created. Gregor worked endlessly so the family could live comfortably. Gregor carried the weight his father could not. And now, seeing his wife in shock, his daughter in distress, his household falling apart, the father faces the truth he has been avoiding. Without Gregor's labor, the family collapses. Instead of guilt, he feels anger. Anger at Gregor for becoming weak. Anger at Gregor for disrupting the home. Anger at Gregor for ruining the illusion that he, the father, was the protector. He picks up apples, small, hard, cruel pieces of fruit from the dinner table. Without hesitation, he hurls them at his son. One, then another, then another. The apples cut into his shell. One gets lodged in his back, deep, painful, unable to be removed. Gregor cries out, not with a human voice, but with the strange, broken sound of his new body. His mother begs the father to stop, weakly pulling on his arm, her voice trembling with fear. But the father is lost in rage. The rage of a man who sees in Gregor not a son, but a problem. And, my friend, that is the real tragedy of this moment. Gregor is not being punished for being a monster. He is being punished for being a burden. As the last apple strikes Gregor, he collapses. The pain is overwhelming. He crawls slowly back into his room, each movement slower than the last. And the father, breathing heavily, slams the door behind him, as if sealing away an unwanted memory. Gregor lies on the floor, unable to move. The apple lodged in his back is not just an injury. It is a symbol of everything Kafka wants us to understand. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people you spent your whole life trying to help. Gregor's transformation has stripped away illusions, and now he sees clearly. His father never respected him. His father never thanked him. His father never saw him as anything more than a source of income. And now, without that income, without that usefulness, he is treated as disposable. Gregor does not die today, but something inside him does. A piece of hope, a piece of love, a piece of belief that his family would protect him the way he once protected them. He now understands, in a painfully quiet way, he was never the son, he was the servant. And servants, when they stop serving, are punished. That, my friend, is the cold truth Kafka reveals through the father's rage. There's a kind of suffering that doesn't arrive suddenly. It doesn't crash into your life like a storm. It creeps in quietly, silently. A slow erosion, soft as dust, but just as suffocating. This chapter is about that slow erosion. Gregor's decline, not in his body alone, but in his place within the world. After the father's attack, Gregor is deeply wounded. The apple, lodged in his back, rots slowly inside him, infecting his body and draining what little strength he has left. But more painful than the physical wound is the emotional one. Gregor begins to understand that he is no longer someone to be cared for, but someone to be endured. He lies for hours, sometimes days, in the same corner of his room, breathing shallowly, barely moving, barely living. The once soft concern in his family's voices has now been replaced with exhaustion. Greta brings food less often. Sometimes she forgets. Sometimes she comes late. Sometimes she doesn't come at all. And when she does enter, she does it quickly, without looking at him, without speaking. She used to worry if he ate too little. Now she just shrugs and takes the untouched food away. Her eyes no longer see her brother, only a shadow of the responsibility she never asked for. Meanwhile, the household changes. The father returns to work. The mother takes in sewing. Greta also finds a job. They are all tired, exhausted, barely scraping through each day. And in their exhaustion, Gregor becomes something else entirely. A silent burden, a reminder of the life they lost, a problem they don't know how to solve. This change is not cruel, it's human. When people are drowning in their own worries, they stop having the strength to save someone else. And this, my friend, is where Gregor's decline truly begins. Not from the wound in his back, but from the shrinking of attention, the fading of compassion, the slow washing away of his place in the home.
The room that once held his furniture, his belongings, his memories, is now a storage space. Boxes, old clothes, discarded objects. Gregor's room becomes a junk room, a place where the family stores the things they don't need. Symbolic, isn't it? Gregor, too, has become something they don't know where to put, something they hope to ignore. He is no longer a son, no longer a worker, no longer a contributor. He is an inconvenience stored away in a dark room. And through all this, Gregor says nothing. He doesn't have the voice to speak, but even if he had, who would listen? He watches the shadows move across the walls as days pass. He listens to the family eating dinner without him. He hears laughter sometimes and silence other times. And slowly, he begins to understand what Kafka wants us to see. Isolation is not always loud. Sometimes it is soft, familiar, predictable. A feeling that grows until it becomes the air you breathe. Gregor's world becomes smaller with each passing day, shrinking from a city to a home, to a room, to a corner, to a single thought. Maybe they would be better without me. When a person feels forgotten, they don't always give up immediately. Sometimes before the final surrender, there is one last spark, one last moment of hope, a final attempt to reach the people they love. This chapter is Gregor's final spark, his last attempt to connect with a world that has already let him go. Gregor is weak now. The apple buried in his shell has become part of him, a painful reminder of his father's rage and his family's exhaustion. He rarely moves, he rarely eats, he rarely lifts his head. But one evening, something changes. The Samsa family invites lodgers, 3 stern, serious men, into their home to help pay the bills. These men represent the new world of the household, a world where Gregor does not belong. The family cleans every corner of the house for these men. They prepare food. They speak politely. They walk carefully. And Gregor watches all this from the darkness of his room, watching a family learning to live without him. But then, something unexpected happens. Grete begins to play the violin. Her music, soft and trembling, fills the home with a beauty Gregor had almost forgotten. The sound awakens something inside him, something human, something tender, something that had not died even through all the suffering. Gregor remembers who Grete used to be, the young girl full of dreams, full of light, full of music. And in the depths of his fading mind, he thinks, I want to be closer to her. I want her to know I never stopped loving her. And so, with all his remaining strength, Gregor begins to move, slowly, painfully, step by fragile step. He crawls out of his dark room, drawn by the music, drawn by the sister he believed would never abandon him. He does not come for food, not for help, not for survival. He comes for connection, for belonging, for a moment of beauty and truth before everything ends. Gregor enters the living room. The lodgers look up, shocked and disgusted. His mother cries out. His father stands ready to attack. But Grete, she stops playing. Her violin falls silent. Her face hardens. Because in her eyes, Gregor is no longer her brother trying to listen to her music. He is an intruder, a danger, a disruption. For a brief moment, Gregor expects her to say his name, to recognize him, to feel something, anything. But instead, Grete speaks the words that seal Gregor's fate. We must get rid of it. Not him. Not Gregor. Not my brother. It. That single word cuts deeper than any wound. My friend, that is the moment Gregor truly falls apart inside. He came for love. He came for connection. He came for the music that once linked their souls. But all he receives is rejection from the person he loved the most. The lodgers demand the creature be removed. The father agrees. The mother hides. And Grete, the sister he believed in, declares that Gregor must disappear for the family to live in peace. Gregor crawls back to his room, not because they force him, but because he now believes they deserve a better life without him. This is the final attempt, the last spark of hope, and it ends in silence.
My friend, there are deaths that come suddenly, like lightning splitting the sky. And then there are deaths that happen quietly, softly, like a candle that simply runs out of flame. Gregor's death is the second kind, a quiet ending to a quiet life. After Grete's words, "We must get rid of it," something inside Gregor finally breaks. Not his shell, not his body, his spirit. You see, my friend, for all his suffering, for all his isolation, Gregor had held on to one belief, that somewhere beneath everything, his family still loved him. But when Grete, the sister he loved most, looked at him and saw only a burden, Gregor realized the truth he had avoided since the day he woke as an insect. He was no longer part of this home. He no longer belonged in this world. He retreats to his room, slowly, painfully, each step a confession that life has nothing left to offer him. Gregor lies down in the darkness. The apple wound in his back throbs faintly. His legs twitch softly, like dying leaves. His breathing grows shallow. His thoughts grow distant. But strangely, he feels peace. For the first time since his transformation, there is no fear, no responsibility, no expectation, just stillness. Gregor thinks of his family, not with anger, not with resentment, but with a tired kind of love. He forgives them, silently, entirely, because Gregor has always been a giver, a caretaker, a soul too gentle for the harshness of his life. And even now, on the edge of death, he wishes them a better future without him. Kafka writes it simply, quietly. He felt his body weakening, and he thought that it might be best if he disappeared. And so, just before dawn, Gregor Samsa takes his final breath. No final words, no one holding his hand, no one calling his name. He dies alone, but he dies relieved. Relieved that he will no longer be a burden, relieved that the family will be free to live again, relieved that the suffering he never deserved is finally ending. Gregor's death is not dramatic. It is gentle, soft, almost tender, as if the universe is apologizing for everything it took from him. Early in the morning, the family wakes. The cleaning woman opens Gregor's door and finds him still. She calls out, almost casually, "He's gone. The creature is dead." Not Gregor, not their son, not their brother. The creature. And when the family hears this, they don't cry. They don't collapse. They don't mourn. They breathe. A long, deep breath of relief. Gregor Samsa gave everything to them. And in the end, his death gives them peace. And that's it for today, my friend. You were listening to Wise Alchemy. The story ends here for now, but you and I will meet again. Thank you.